The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a phone call. It was a crisp Saturday morning, the kind that made suburban life seem almost picturesque, birds chirping, kids playing in their yards, and the faint hum of lawnmowers in the distance. I was in the middle of brewing my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. Hello? Yes, hi. I'm calling about the property on Sycamore Drive. I saw the listing online and I almost dropped my mug. What listing? I asked, my mind immediately shifting into lawyer mode. The one on Zillow, the woman replied, her voice cheerful. It says the house is for sale, great price too. My husband and I were hoping to schedule a showing. I cut her off, my pulse quickening. My house isn't for sale. A pause. Then, she laughed nervously. Oh, maybe it's a mistake? It says here that the HOA is handling the sale. I didn't hear the rest of what she said. My heart was already hammering. I thanked her for the call, hung up, and immediately pulled up my laptop. A few quick searches later, I found it. There, staring back at me from multiple real estate websites, was my house. Listed for sale. By my homeowners association. And worse? The listing agent wasn't a real person. It was Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog and reigning HOA tyrant. I clenched my jaw. If she thought she could push me out, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Karen Whitmore was the kind of person who made suburban living a nightmare. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was the neighbor. The kind who sent emails about trash cans being left out for an extra hour. The kind who measured grass height with a ruler. The kind who issued fines for having the wrong shade of beige on your mailbox. And now, apparently, she was the kind who listed other people's homes for sale. I wasn't surprised. Karen had been trying to get me out of this neighborhood for years. Ever since I refused to let her bully me into repainting my perfectly fine front door. Red is too aggressive for our community, dear. I had ignored her petty fines, shut down her passive-aggressive complaints, and made it clear that I wasn't going anywhere. But this? This was next-level insanity. And she had no idea I was a real estate attorney. Time to teach Karen a very expensive lesson. The first thing I did was take screenshots of everything. The listings, the fake agent name, the contact info directing potential buyers to the HOA office instead of a real estate agency. Then, I dug deeper. Karen, for all her obnoxious perfectionism, wasn't exactly tech-savvy. A quick search through the website's backend, thank you, legal expertise, showed her personal email as the one used to create the listing. Gotcha. Then, I called a friend of mine, Brian, a cybersecurity specialist, who owed me a favor. In less than 10 minutes, he traced the IP address used to post the listing. Guess where it led? Straight to Karen's house. This wasn't just an HOA oversight. This was fraud. And Karen was about to find out just how badly she'd messed up. I didn't go straight to Karen's house. No, that would have been too easy. Instead, I waited for the next HOA meeting, one of her precious monthly gatherings where she loved to flaunt her power. The room was packed with neighborhood residents, most of whom were sick of Karen but too afraid to challenge her. I sat in the front row. Karen stood at the podium, rambling about property values and how certain residents weren't upholding community standards. I let her talk. Then I raised my hand. Karen, can you explain why my house is listed for sale? Silence. Karen's plastic smile faltered. Excuse me? I pulled out my laptop, turned the screen toward the room, and projected the fraudulent listing onto the HOA's presentation screen. Gasps. Murmurs. Karen's face turned the color of spoiled milk. That must be a mistake. The HOA. Oh, don't worry, I cut in smoothly. I already traced the IP address that created the listing. It came from your house, Karen. Dead silence. Then, someone in the back muttered, "Holy crap." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I leaned forward, my voice calm but lethal. I'm a real estate attorney, Karen. Do you have any idea how illegal this is? More gasps. Karen visibly paled. I was just trying to. I held up a hand. Let me explain what you just did. Real estate fraud. Wire fraud. False advertising. Misrepresentation. And that's before I even start calculating damages. Karen actually swayed on her feet. And if you don't remove these listings within the next hour, I'll be filing a lawsuit so massive, you'll be begging to sell your own house just to pay your legal fees. She opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. She knew. She was screwed. The HOA board members, who usually let Karen run things unchecked, turned on her immediately. I had no idea about this, one of them stammered. This isn't how we operate. Another crossed his arms. Karen, you have to fix this. Now. Karen, humiliated and panicked, scrambled for her phone and deleted the listings on the spot. I wasn't done. You'll also be making a public apology, I added. She flinched. What? I smiled. To me, and to everyone in this neighborhood you've been bullying for years. And if you try one more stunt like this, I'll personally ensure you never serve on another HOA board again. Defeated, Karen nodded. And just like that, the reign of HOA terror was over. Karen resigned from the HOA within the month. Apparently, she wanted to focus on her personal life, which was a fancy way of saying she didn't want me breathing down her neck with more lawsuits. The neighborhood? Much happier without her. And me? I got a bottle of expensive wine from one of my neighbors, a formal apology letter from Karen, likely written through gritted teeth, and a new reputation as the guy you do not mess with. The best part? I still lived in my house. And Karen? Well, rumor had it, she put her own house on the market soon after. This time for real. For most people, that would have been the end of it. Karen had been humiliated. She had resigned from the HOA. The fraudulent listings were deleted, and she had slunk back into her overpriced, beige-painted McMansion like a wounded animal. But for me, it wasn't over. Not even close. Because Karen had done more than just list my house online. She had committed a crime. And I wasn't the kind of guy who let things slide. So, while Karen was licking her wounds, I was busy drafting a lawsuit. Not just a petty, slap-on-the-wrist lawsuit. A six-figure, career-ending, financially devastating lawsuit. And when Karen got served, oh, it was glorious. It happened on a Friday afternoon. A knock on Karen's door. She answered, expecting a package, maybe a neighbor. Instead, a process server standing on her porch, handing her a thick stack of legal documents. Karen blinked. What? You've been served, the process server said, then walked away without another word. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it from a neighbor. Apparently, Karen just stood there, flipping through the lawsuit, her face going from confused to pale to absolutely horrified. Then, she screamed. Like, full volume, banshee-level screaming. Of course, I didn't hear about that until later. Because while Karen was having a meltdown, I was having a whiskey. Because I knew exactly what was coming next. The next morning, I got an email from Karen. Subject, let's be reasonable. I almost laughed. This was the same woman who tried to fraudulently sell my house, and now she wanted to be reasonable? I opened the email, already knowing how this would go. Dear, my name. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I never intended any harm, and I certainly never meant to cause you any distress. Perhaps we could discuss this in a more civil manner before escalating things further? Please let me know if you'd be open to meeting in person. Classic Karen. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. Did she really think she could gaslight her way out of this? I didn't respond. Instead, I let my lawyer handle it. Yes, I'm a real estate attorney, but any smart lawyer knows you never handle your own case. You get someone else to do it for you. So my lawyer, David, a pit bull in a suit, sent his response. Dear Ms. Whitmore, my client has no interest in informal discussions. Your fraudulent real estate listings have caused him significant distress and potential financial harm. We are prepared to proceed with litigation unless a substantial settlement is reached. Please have your legal representation contact my office immediately. Short, direct, terrifying. Karen didn't reply. Instead, she did something even better. She hired a lawyer. And that's when things really got fun. A week later, my lawyer got an email from Karen's attorney. It was beautifully stupid. Karen's defense? It was all a misunderstanding. She thought my house was abandoned. The HOA had every right to suggest property listings to maintain neighborhood value. Yeah, they were trying to claim that Karen wasn't acting alone, but as a representative of the HOA, and that her actions were not fraudulent, but rather an administrative oversight. A hilariously bad argument. Because, as we all knew, my house was clearly not abandoned. I lived there. I mowed the lawn. I existed. The HOA had no legal authority to list privately owned homes for sale. Karen had personally set up the fake real estate profile using her own email and her own IP address. So, my lawyer responded with the legal equivalent of a nuke. Dear counsel, your client's fraudulent real estate listing was not only unauthorized but also deliberately misleading. Evidence of her direct involvement, including digital footprints, has been documented and is admissible in court. Your attempt to shift blame to the HOA is both legally unsound and unsupported by any governing documents. Should this proceed to trial, we will seek the maximum damages allowable by law, in addition to punitive damages for fraudulent misrepresentation. Please advise your client accordingly. Translation? Settle now, or we're dragging this all the way to court where Karen is going to lose everything. And that's when Karen started begging. Karen caved fast. Within 2 weeks, her lawyer came back with an offer. A formal written apology. A public statement at the next HOA meeting. A $75,000 settlement. Was it as much as I could have gotten in court? Maybe not. But the real win wasn't just the money. It was Karen's public humiliation. Because at the next HOA meeting, Karen had to stand up in front of the entire neighborhood and admit everything. She stood at the podium, visibly shaking, reading from a prepared statement. I deeply regret my actions and the distress I have caused to Mr. my last name. I understand that what I did was inappropriate, legally incorrect, and unethical. I sincerely apologize to the HOA board and to the residents of our community. People clapped when she was done. She turned bright red and stormed out of the meeting the moment it was over. Within a month, Karen's house had a real, for sale, sign in front of it. She moved. To where? I didn't care. She was gone. And my house? Still mine. Game. Set. Match. A few months later, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter. Freer. Less oppressive. Without Karen around, people relaxed. The HOA meetings were normal again. No more surprise fines, no more passive-aggressive emails, no more dictatorship disguised as community management. One evening, I was walking my dog when a neighbor jogged up to me. "You're a legend, you know that?" he said, grinning. I laughed. "Oh, I just did what any reasonable person would do." He shook his head. "No, man. You took down a Karen." And honestly, that was the best victory of all. It had been 6 months since Karen had slithered out of the neighborhood, tail between her legs. The air felt cleaner without her constant passive-aggressive complaints. The HOA was finally functioning like a normal homeowners association instead of a dictatorship. Life was good. Until I got the letter. A plain white envelope, no return address, stuffed in my mailbox. I opened it, expecting junk mail. Instead, I found a single sheet of paper, typed in a too familiar font. "You think you won? You think this is over? You took everything from me. But I have friends in high places. Enjoy your house while you still can." No signature. But I didn't need one. Karen was back. At first, I dismissed it. Karen was gone. She'd been humiliated, sued into silence, and forced to flee her beige kingdom. But then, things started changing. The HOA, once peaceful, began issuing new fines, suspiciously Karen-like fines. A $50 fine for leaving my trash cans out too long. A $75 fine for having an improperly maintained lawn, despite it being freshly mowed. A $100 fine for violating HOA standards without any actual details. At first, I thought it was the board tightening rules. Then, I attended the next HOA meeting. And there, sitting smugly at the back of the room, was Karen. Not as a resident. Not as an official. But as a special consultant for the new HOA president, a woman named Deborah Sinclair. Who was Deborah? A real estate agent. and Karen's old friend. Oh, hell. No. Deborah was exactly what you'd expect from Karen's inner circle, polished, fake smiling, and filled with the same smug self-importance. The moment she took over the HOA presidency, things changed. HOA fines tripled. A new rule proposal that would require aesthetic consistency for all homes. Translation, they wanted to control paint colors, landscaping, even mailboxes. And the worst part? They were pushing for a new rezoning proposal that would make selling homes to approved buyers a requirement. Translation? Karen and Deborah wanted control over who moved in and out of the neighborhood. I could already see where this was going, and I wasn't about to let them get away with it. I sat through the entire meeting, watching Deborah talk about revitalizing the community, while Karen sat smugly beside her. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they had beaten me. They were dead wrong. So, I did what I do best. I went digging. Within a week, I had everything I needed. Karen was technically banned from HO positions due to the lawsuit settlement. Her role as consultant was just a loophole. Deborah's real estate company had a shady history of steering buyers, something that violated the Fair Housing Act. Multiple residents were fed up with the new rules, but felt powerless to fight back. That was about to change. At the next HOA meeting, I made my move. I waited until Deborah and Karen were basking in their own self-importance before I raised my hand. Deborah, quick question, I said, standing up. She smiled. Of course, my name. What can we help you with? Would you mind explaining why Karen is still involved in HOA matters? Karen's smug expression faltered. Deborah hesitated. Well, Karen is simply a volunteer consultant. Her experience is invaluable. I pulled out my phone. Right. So how do you explain this? I projected an email onto the community screen, one that I had obtained legally, thanks to a friendly HOA member who was sick of Karen's crap. It was a message from Karen to Deborah, outlining their exact plan to take control of the HOA, increase fines, and filter out undesirable buyers to shape the neighborhood properly. A literal smoking gun. The room erupted. People lost it. Some shouted about how unfair the fines had become. Others demanded Karen be banned permanently. One guy, who had been fined for parking his car an inch over his driveway line, straight up threatened to sue. Karen? She turned white. Deborah? She tried to fight back. This is taken out of context, she sputtered. This is... I cut her off. It's also a Fair Housing Act violation, I said smoothly. Gasps. Deborah froze. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discriminatory practices in real estate and rigging buyer approvals based on HOA preferences. Oh, that was very illegal. And the best part? I had already reported them to the state real estate board. Within weeks, everything crumbled. Karen was permanently banned from any HOA involvement. No loopholes this time. Deborah was removed as HOA president when multiple lawsuits were filed against her, including one from a guy she tried to fine for having unapproved lawn furniture. The HOA rolled back all the fines and rule changes, returning to normal operations. The State Real Estate Board launched an investigation into Deborah's practices. Karen? After realizing she had zero power left, she disappeared from community meetings altogether. Deborah? She resigned in disgrace. The neighborhood? Celebrated. And me? Well, let's just say I got several bottles of whiskey from grateful neighbors. One guy even offered to cut my lawn for free as a thank you. Karen had tried to take me down twice. And twice I had burned her plans to the ground. Maybe one day she'd learn. But knowing Karen? Probably not. Months later, I ran into a neighbor at the grocery store. You're the guy who took down Karen and Deborah, right? He asked, grinning. I shrugged. I guess. He laughed. Dude, you're a neighborhood legend. I chuckled, shaking my head. Just a guy who doesn't like being messed with. Well, he said, if another Karen shows up, we know who to call. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. 6 months. That's how long it had been since Karen and her equally shady friend Deborah had been exposed, humiliated, and forced to flee the HOA in disgrace. The neighborhood was finally calm, the fines had disappeared, and for the first time in years, The HOA was actually functioning like a homeowners association instead of a dictatorship. I should have known it wouldn't last. Because one afternoon, as I was returning from work, I spotted a car parked at the end of my driveway. A familiar, beige Toyota Camry. And sitting inside it? Karen. She was back. I took a slow breath, set my briefcase down, and walked up to her window. Karen turned her head to face me, a smug little smile tugging at her lips. I crossed my arms. Didn't expect to see you around here again. She tilted her sunglasses down just enough for me to see her beady little eyes. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure about that. Something about the way she said it sent a chill down my spine. Karen had something planned. And I had a feeling it was going to be worse than before. That night, I did a little digging. Karen didn't own property in the neighborhood anymore. She had sold her house right after the lawsuit, and all signs pointed to her moving across town. So why the hell was she back? It didn't take long to find out. A quick search of the HOA's latest meeting minutes revealed something insane. Karen had been reinstated onto the HOA board. Not as Karen Whitmore, oh no. She had used her maiden name, Karen Lewis, to reapply as a new community liaison. The board members? A mix of newcomers and a few clueless retirees who probably didn't recognize her. Karen had infiltrated the HOA again. And she was coming for me. The next morning, an official HOA violation notice showed up on my door. Notice of infraction, failure to comply with HOA landscaping guidelines. Fine, $200. I stared at it, baffled. My lawn was perfectly maintained. I paid a landscaper twice a month to keep it that way. This was bull. And it got worse. A second violation appeared for improper trash storage, $150 fine. A third for excessive noise, $250 fine, which was funny because I lived alone and barely even played music. Then, the kicker, a final warning letter stating that continued violations may result in HOA-mandated property reassessment. Translation? Karen was trying to get me fined into foreclosure. And she was doing it legally this time. I clenched my jaw. She thought she could beat me with HOA loopholes? She must have forgotten who I am. Step 1 was easy. Challenge everything. Under state law, HOA fines must be reasonable and justified. A homeowner also has the right to dispute violations before they escalate. So, I did exactly that. I sent formal appeals for each fine. I demanded photographic evidence of my alleged violations. I filed complaints with the state's HOA Oversight Board. And then? I attended the next HOA meeting. It was packed. The second I walked in, Karen's smug little smirk vanished. Oh, Karen, I said, taking a seat. We really have to stop meeting like this. She didn't respond. The new HOA president, some poor guy named Alan, cleared his throat. We have several disputes to go over tonight, including some fines issued to, Mr., my last name. I stood. That's right, I said. And I'd like to know why Karen, who doesn't even live here anymore, is suddenly issuing fines again. Gasps. People started muttering. Alan blinked. Wait, what? I pulled out a stack of documents. Karen sold her home 6 months ago after being sued for real estate fraud. So, tell me, how is she legally on this board? Karen's face went ghost white. She stammered, looking at Alan. That's not true. I moved, but I held up another document. This is Karen's real estate record, I said, showing she no longer owns property here. Alan looked at her. Karen, is this true? Karen swallowed. Well, technically, yes, but. Alan sighed. Karen, you can't be on the HOA board if you don't live here. Her mouth snapped shut. I leaned forward. And since she was illegally issuing fines, every single one is now null and void. Alan nodded slowly. He's right. All fines issued by Karen will be reversed immediately. More murmurs. Karen looked like she was about to explode. But I wasn't done. Karen tried to save herself. She launched into a speech about maintaining community values and how this neighborhood deserves better than rule breakers like my name. Wrong move. Because everyone hated Karen. Half the room cut her off, listing all the stupid fines she had issued over the years. Alan sighed. Karen, I think it's best if you step down. And no, she shrieked. You can't do this. But they could. And they did. Within minutes, Karen was officially banned from the HOA forever. And the best part? As I was leaving, a woman approached me, one of Karen's old neighbors from her new house across town. You should know, she said, smirking, Karen tried the same tricks in her new neighborhood. Except over there? Someone reported her for zoning violations. I blinked. Meaning? She grinned. Meaning Karen might be losing her own house soon. I laughed all the way home. A few months later, the neighborhood moved on. Karen? Officially banned from our HOA. Under investigation for zoning fraud in her new neighborhood. Publicly humiliated, again. And me? Still in my house. Still winning. Karen had tried one last time to take me down. And just like before, I had burned her to the ground. Maybe this time, she'd finally learn. But if not, well, I'd always be ready for round 4. It had been a glorious, Karen-free few months. The neighborhood was peaceful. The HOA, under new leadership, was actually doing its job instead of harassing homeowners. People were happy. But then, one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. Hello? Silence. Then, you ruined my life. I knew that voice. Karen. I sighed. Karen, I thought we were done. You took everything from me, she hissed. You cost me my house. You turned my own neighbors against me. Karen, I said, rubbing my temples, you did that to yourself. She ignored me. You think you've won? She spat. You think you're safe? Well, guess what? I'm not done with you. Click. The line went dead. I stared at my phone. Oh, for the love of. Karen was back. Again. And this time, she wasn't playing by the rules anymore. 2 weeks later, I woke up to a text from my neighbor, Tom. Dude, your back gate is wide open. My blood ran cold. I threw on a jacket and rushed outside. Sure enough, my backyard gate, which I always kept locked, was wide open. I stepped onto my patio, looked around. That's when I saw it. Carved into the wood of my fence, in jagged, uneven letters. Get out. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a prank. This was a threat. And I had a very good idea who was behind it. Karen was escalating. And I wasn't about to let it slide. Within an hour, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. She's officially lost it, I said, sliding my phone across the desk. She broke onto my property. Left me a threat. I want a restraining order. David, my lawyer, nodded. We've got enough to file. But are you sure she's the one who did it? I pulled up my security camera footage. It wasn't the clearest video, but there was enough. A blonde woman wearing a hoodie, creeping around my backyard at 2 a.m. It wasn't proof that would hold up in criminal court, but it was enough for a judge to take action. By the next morning, I had filed for a temporary restraining order. Karen would not be allowed within 500 feet of me, my house, or my property. She had gone too far this time. And now? She was about to pay the price. 3 days later, Karen was served at her new address. And oh boy, did she lose it. The moment the process server handed her the papers, she screamed at him in the middle of her new neighborhood. This is harassment, she shrieked. He's lying. I didn't do anything. The process server didn't care. He just said, "You've been served," and walked off like an absolute legend. But here's where things got interesting. Apparently, Karen's new neighbors saw the whole thing. And, being nosy suburbanites, they started asking questions. Why is Karen getting served legal papers? Is she in trouble? Wait, didn't she say she moved here because she was the victim of a lawsuit? Karen's carefully crafted sob story, where she painted herself as an innocent homeowner who was bullied out of her old neighborhood, fell apart overnight. People started Googling her name. And guess what came up? My lawsuit. The fraudulent real estate listing. Everything. By the end of the week, Karen was completely shunned by her new neighbors. And me? I was just getting started. The restraining order should have been the end of it. But Karen? She was too stupid to stop. A few weeks later, I came home from work and noticed something off. My trash cans, normally at the side of my house, had been dumped all over my driveway. At first, I thought it was raccoons. But then I checked my security cameras. And there she was. Karen. At 3 a.m., sneaking onto my property and flipping over my trash bins like a deranged goblin. That was all I needed. I took the footage straight to the police. With the restraining order already in place, this wasn't just trespassing. It was a criminal offense. By the next evening, Karen was arrested. Karen wasn't just arrested. She was booked, processed, and thrown into county jail overnight. And, because the universe has a sense of humor, her mugshot ended up online. Someone, probably a neighbor, found it and shared it in the old HOA Facebook group. Within hours, it went viral. Comments flooded in. Oh my God, she finally got what she deserved. Wait, isn't this the same Karen who tried to sell someone else's house? This woman is an actual cartoon villain. Somebody make t-shirts with her mugshot. The best part? Karen's new HOA found out. And guess what? They immediately moved to evict her. With Karen's criminal record, her neighbors hating her, and her new HOA turning against her, she finally gave up. She sold her house at a loss, packed her bags, and disappeared. Where did she go? Nobody knows. But as far as my neighborhood was concerned, Karen was gone for good. And me? I still had my house. I still had my peace. And best of all, I had the ultimate victory. Because no matter where Karen went, she would always be remembered as the HOA monster who lost to a real estate attorney. And honestly, that was justice. A month after Karen vanished, I got an unexpected knock on my door. It was Alan, the new HOA president. He handed me a small box. I opened it. Inside was a plaque, engraved with gold lettering. In recognition of services rendered to the neighborhood, the HOA Karen Slayer. I laughed so hard I almost cried. I hung it in my office. Because let's be real, I earned it. And if another Karen ever showed up, well, they'd know exactly who they were dealing with. Just when I thought it was finally over, a certified letter arrived at my office. I wasn't expecting anything important, so I tore it open without thinking. The moment I saw Karen's name on the header, I groaned. Karen had hired a lawyer. And she was suing me. I scanned the document, my irritation turning into amusement as I read through the ridiculous claims. Karen was demanding $250,000 in damages for emotional distress caused by online defamation, unlawful harassment that led to her losing her home, interfering with her ability to seek gainful employment. I actually laughed out loud at that last one. Karen had screwed herself over. Her mugshot was public record. Her own actions had made her infamous. And now? She was trying to blame me for it? Nice try, Karen. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. David, I said, chuckling, you're not gonna believe this one. David took one look at Karen's lawsuit and shook his head. This is garbage, he said. It won't hold up in court. Think she's actually dumb enough to go through with it? I asked. Probably not, he replied. This is classic Karen intimidation. She's hoping you'll settle just to make her go away. I grinned. She must have forgotten I'm a real estate attorney. I don't settle with crazy people. David smirked. Then let's make her regret this. We filed a response within 24 hours. Motion to dismiss, because her claims were baseless and unsupported. Counterclaim for attorney's fees, because if she wasted my time, she was going to pay for it. Cease and desist demand, a legal warning to never contact me again. Karen got the legal smackdown delivered to her doorstep within a week. And just as expected, she immediately dropped the lawsuit. Game over. Again. At this point, I was convinced Karen had finally slithered away for good. But then, I got a call from a local news station. Hi, Mr. Last name. We're reaching out regarding your legal dispute with a former HOA member. Would you be interested in sharing your side of the story? I blinked. Wait, what? That's when the reporter explained. Karen had contacted them. She had spun a new sob story, painting herself as a helpless victim who had been bullied out of her own home by a vindictive attorney with too much power. And now? She was trying to go public. Oh, Karen. She really never learns. Karen actually went on TV. She sat down with a local reporter, putting on her best fake tears, and rambled about how she was wrongfully persecuted. She claimed, "I had manipulated the legal system to destroy her life. The HOA was conspiring against her, despite the fact that she had tried to rig it herself. She was just trying to help the community, and I had ruined everything." It was laughable. But the best part? The comment section on the news site immediately turned against her. People started fact-checking her in real time. Isn't this the lady who fraudulently listed someone else's house for sale? Wait, didn't she get arrested for trespassing? This woman is insane. She's literally the reason HOAs have a bad reputation. If I ever see this woman near my property, I'm calling the cops. Within hours, the news station deleted the segment from their website. Karen's attempt at revenge backfired spectacularly. A week later, I got another call. But this time, it was from the police. "Mr. Last Name, are you aware that Ms. Whitmore attempted to file a restraining order against you?" I nearly dropped my phone. Wait, what? Apparently, Karen had marched into the police station and demanded a restraining order against me, claiming I was stalking her and ruining her life. The cops laughed her out of the building. Not only did she have zero evidence, but I already had a restraining order against her. So, what did she do? She had a full-blown meltdown in the station lobby, screaming, crying, threatening to sue the entire police department. She was escorted out by officers. And 2 days later, she packed her bags and left town for good. This time for real. Months passed. No fines. No threats. No psychotic HOA antics. The neighborhood? Peaceful. The new HOA? Reasonable. Karen? Gone. I had one. For good. One evening, as I was walking my dog, a neighbor jogged up to me. "You really did it," he said, shaking his head. "You took down the worst HOA villain of all time." I grinned. "Let's just hope we never get a sequel." He laughed. "Yeah, but if we do." I smirked. "We'll be ready." And with that, I finally closed the book on Karen's reign of terror. It had been 6 months since Karen fled town, and life was finally normal. No fake fines. No HOA corruption. No psychotic suburban dictators trying to ruin my life. But then, one morning, my phone buzzed. 12 times. I groggily reached for it, expecting some spam emails or HOA reminders. Instead, a string of texts from friends and neighbors. "Dude, have you seen this? WTF is Karen doing? You need to check Facebook now." My stomach sank. I opened Facebook. And there it was. Karen had created a brand new page called Justice for Karen, and it was dedicated entirely to smearing me. The page was insane. Karen had rewritten history, painting herself as the innocent victim of my bullying, corruption, and legal abuse. Her posts were filled with absolute garbage. I was a dedicated HOA member who only wanted to help my community, but my name manipulated the legal system to destroy my life. I was forced out of my own home by a man with too much power. I was arrested because of his lies. He ruined my reputation. He's dangerous and should never be trusted. It was so ridiculous that I almost laughed. But then, I checked the comments, and my blood boiled. Karen's story had started to spread. And, like all things online, a few idiots actually believed it. Her post had been shared hundreds of times, and people who knew nothing about the real situation were flooding the comments. OMG, I hate lawyers like this. They think they're above the law. Sue him, Karen. Take him for everything he's worth. This guy needs to be stopped. I bet he's done this to other people too. Most of it was the usual Facebook nonsense, people getting mad over something they didn't understand. But then, I saw Karen's latest post. "I am looking for other victims of my name's legal abuse. If you or someone you know has suffered at his hands, please contact me. We will get justice." That's when I realized. Karen wasn't just whining online. She was building a case. Or at least trying to. Less than a week later, I got another certified letter in the mail. from Karen's new lawyer. It was another lawsuit threat. Only this time, it wasn't just about defamation. Karen was claiming I had engaged in a pattern of legal harassment and was seeking $500,000 in damages. $500,000. I stared at the paper, then sighed. She really doesn't know when to quit. I called David. Guess who's back? I said. David groaned. I swear to God, does this woman not have a hobby? I slid the letter across his desk. She's claiming I've been harassing her. Says she has multiple witnesses. David read the letter, then shook his head. Yeah. No. This isn't even a real case. She's fishing. I nodded. So what do we do? David smirked. We bury her. Karen's new lawsuit was absolute nonsense, but I wasn't just going to get it dismissed. I was going to end this once and for all. David filed a brutal counterclaim. Defamation, for publicly smearing me with false accusations. Abuse of process, for filing frivolous lawsuits just to harass me. Damages for reputation harm, because her little Facebook tantrum had spread lies about me. Then, we added the nuclear option. A motion for sanctions. Meaning, if Karen lost, she wouldn't just owe me money. She would owe extra penalties for wasting the court's time. And when she got the notice, she absolutely lost her mind. The night after Karen got our legal response, she went live on Facebook. She was shaking with rage. Her hair was a mess, her face was red, and she was rambling like a lunatic. This is what happens when you stand up to corruption, she screeched at the camera. This man is trying to destroy me again. Her followers? They were eating it up. Stay strong, Karen. Fight back. Sue him for more. But here's where Karen messed up. Because in her blind rage, she admitted everything. She straight up confessed that she made the lawsuit up just to punish me. I screen recorded the whole thing. The next morning, David filed an emergency motion to dismiss her case with prejudice. Translation? Karen's lawsuit was dead. Forever. And then? We sued her. Karen didn't show up to court. Her lawyer? Quit. The judge? Tore her case apart. And me? I won. Karen was ordered to pay $100,000 in damages for defamation and legal harassment. An additional $25,000 in court sanctions. All my attorney's fees. But the best part? The judge issued a permanent injunction, meaning Karen could never file another lawsuit against me again. Game. Set. Match. Karen? She vanished. Her Facebook page disappeared. Her followers turned on her. And, according to some old neighbors, she ended up moving to a trailer park out in the middle of nowhere. The Karen empire had fallen. And this time, she wasn't coming back. Months later, my neighborhood was thriving. No HOA corruption. No insane fines. No psychotic suburban dictators trying to sell my house. One evening, I got a knock on my door. It was Tom, my neighbor. Hey, he said, smirking. We got you something. He handed me a small plaque. Engraved in gold letters, it read, "The HOA Karen Slayer, Defender of the Neighborhood." I laughed. Because damn it, I earned that title. And if another Karen ever showed up, well, I'd be ready. Karen was gone. For real this time. No more lawsuits. No more HOA drama. No more insane, psychotic revenge schemes. The neighborhood was peaceful again, and I finally had my life back. One evening, as I sat on my porch with a cold beer, watching the sun set over the quiet street, I thought about everything that had happened. Karen had tried everything: fraud, harassment, legal threats, online smears, and lost every time. She had destroyed herself. And me? I was still standing. Still in my house. Still undefeated. A car rolled by, the driver slowing down to wave. It was Alan, the new HOA president, the good one. I waved back, knowing that for the first time in years, the HOA was actually doing its job instead of trying to ruin people's lives. Karen's reign of terror was over. And in its place? A quiet, boring, normal neighborhood. Exactly the way it should be. I took another sip of my beer and smiled. Victory never tasted so good.